In today's video, I'm going to be talking about a defensive tactical concept called zonal pressing. Specifically, I'm going to be referring to a 2-1-2 zonal press. The reason for calling it a 2-1-2 zonal press will become more obvious throughout the video. To start with, let's talk about what this form of pressing is trying to achieve and its basic principles. The first principle or goal of this type of pressing is to prevent easy ball progression. The ways that we achieve this are to cut the field in half so the offense has less space to use, and to try to encourage sideways and backwards passes from the opposition. The second principle is that we want to encourage attackers into defensive overloads. What this means is that we want the attackers to play into areas of the field where we have more defenders than they have attackers. This also means we're not trying to win the ball back immediately. This type of pressing is trying to encourage mistakes out of the opposition and then take advantage of those mistakes. We are not pressing intensely to always win the ball back wherever we can. The next part I want to talk about is the guiding rules of a 2-1-2 zonal press. Guiding rules are rules that you can tell your team specifically to enforce, while the principles are more just basic theory and understanding. These are defined rules that are easy to follow for a team. The first rule is that we want to cut off easy circulation passes. By circulation pass, I mean any pass that allows the attacking team to shift the ball from one side of the field to the other. Our goal here, as we stated in our principles, is that we want to force play to one side of the field. So cutting off the circulation pass will allow us to do that. The second rule is that we then want to cut off any easy vertical options. The reason for doing this is we want to stop the attacking team from progressing the ball through our defensive lines. The third rule is that we want to then cut off the easy pass to the wing. Most formations, especially defensively when you're compact, have more defenders in the center of the field than on the wings. So we want the ball to be away from the wing as much as possible, and we want to force the ball into the center where we have numbers, like we said in our basic principle. The fourth and final rule is in that we want to cover the passing windows between our pressing players. A passing window, or it can also be called a passing lane, is basically just the gap between two defenders that allows the attacker to play a splitting pass between them. So when our players are pressing to cut off the first three options, as we said in the first three rules, the other players then are looking to cover the windows in between our pressing players to make sure that they do not get played through. Now that we have the rules and principles out of the way, let's get into a real game-like example. I'm going to be talking from the perspective of the orange team playing in a 4-2-3-1 formation. The attacking team will be the team in blue playing in a 4-4-2. So to start off with, let's say the goalkeeper has the ball in his hands and he rolls it out to his right center back. A lot of pressing teams would then just send their forward to press the center back and try to win the ball back. However, this allows for an easy pass across to his other center back, and our number 9 has to chase. So instead of doing that, our number 9 is going to follow the first rule of our zonal pressing. He's going to cut off the circulation pass, which would be that pass that switches the ball from the right-hand side of the field to the left-hand side, from the number 4 to the number 5. So to do that, this is how he shapes his run to press the ball. Now the number 4 can no longer play an easy pass to the number 5 and switch the ball from the right-hand side to the left-hand side. Remember then that the next rule is to cut off the vertical option. This is the first responsibility of our winger, our number 11 on the left-hand side, to cut off any vertical options into the number 8. If our number 11 were to step out wide, like so, there is now an easy pass into the number 8. And then after the number 8 receives the ball, our number 11 will be chasing from behind the number 8 in order to try to defend. So if we go back to our starting position, our number 9 pressing from the side, our number 11 first wants to make sure that the vertical option is covered, so he will shift a little bit to the inside to make sure that's covered. Now the pass out wide is open, but this is a much better option than the previous situation. Our number 11 now only has to run horizontally across to stop the ball instead of chasing from behind. Now if we reset, now remember our third rule is to cut off the pass to the wing. So to cut off the pass to the wing, our number 11 is going to make sure that the number 10 is coming to cover the vertical option first, and then going out to cut off the pass to the wing. So now our number 9 is covering the first rule by cutting off the circulation pass to the other side of the field. Our number 10 is cutting off the vertical option, which is the second rule. And our number 11 is cutting off the pass to the wing, which is rule number 3. If our pressing just stopped here, you could see that the passing window, which is the gap between our 10 and our 11, is pretty open. So if the number 9 from blue drops in, there's a pretty easy pass right there. So now if we reset, we remember the fourth and final rule is that we want to cover the passing lanes of our pressing players. So our pressing players in this situation are number 11, our number 9, and our number 10. The passing window between our 10 and our 11 is in here. So now our 6 will move to cover that passing window. So now still with rule number 4, again, our pressing players are 11, 10, and 9. So between our 9 and our 10, there's a passing window that is open to play into. So now our number 8 will step up into this passing window. And now you can see why it's called a 2-1-2 zonal press. Our 9 and our 11 make up the front line of our 2, with our number 10 being the 1 in the middle, covering the gaps in between them. And then the 2 covering players are 6 and our 8, covering the passing windows in between the front 3 pressing players. The final step now is that any player on the weak side, which is the half of the field without the ball, so this left-hand side would be the weak side, is any player on this side is now free to try to intercept passes or help defensively. This can be dependent on the team you're playing against. If the team you're playing against is a much better team, then you might want your number 7 to be more defensive. However, if you're playing against a weaker team or if you're trying to press high to win the ball back a little more aggressively, your number 7 can step up and defend from here. However, like I said, if you want to play more defensively, he can drop off. Either way, the number 7 on the weak side is responsible for covering any big switch from the right-hand side to the left-hand side. So if the pass was played from the number 4, from the blue number 4 to the blue number 3 on this side, that is a number 7's responsibility no matter where he's at. Now let's talk about if the ball gets played out wide. So if the ball is being played out wide like this, let's follow the rules that we have set. Rule number 1 is to cut off any circulation pass. So our number 9 will step across to do just that here. Rule number 2 is that we want to cut off any vertical option. So our number 11 will face straight up on the number 2 and cut down any option down the wing. Notice this is somewhat different from a lot of pressing systems where you encourage wide players towards the sideline. We are playing almost straight up or even forcing him into the middle because that's where all of our defenders are at. So this also helps with rule number 3. Because we're playing straight up down the wing, there's no option down the wing. Rule number 4 is now to cover the lines between our pressing players. So our pressing players, there's only 2 of them this time because this man is both cutting down the vertical option down the wing and is forcing to the middle, therefore cutting off the pass any wider down the wing. Our number 9 is cutting off the circulation pass. So now we want the remaining covering players to cover the passing windows in between. So the passing window in this situation would be the gap here between our 11 and our 9. So our 10 will step over to cover in between here. And now our 6 will step over to cover the passing window in between our 11 and our 10. And the 8 will shift over to cover the passing window between the 9 and the 10. And again, you can see we have our 2-1-2 shape. The 11 and the 9 forming the front 2, the 10 in the middle, and then the 6 and the 8 covering the passing windows as cover players. And again, our 7 on the weak side here is responsible for covering any switch of play. Again, here he's playing a bit more aggressively, but he could be a bit further off as well. And any big switch that comes from the blue number 2 is his responsibility. And just to finish a defensive example, the back line will shift accordingly. Now let's say the blue number 2 is able to find a switch pass to the blue number 5. In this situation, we now are sort of recovering. We're not in a great position to press like we were in the initial example where the keeper is rolling the ball out. But let's remember our rules. Rule number 1 is that we want to cut off any circulation pass. This means the number 9 will step across to cut off the circulation pass. And rule number 2 is to cut off any vertical options. So the number 7 will come across to cut off any vertical options. From this position, if the number 5 would play wide, we're okay because we're pinning the opposition team to the left side and not allowing them to switch back and forth. However, now we do want our other players to come in and help recover in between. So what we'll see now is the number 8 is the closest player, so he will come across and tag the number 7 to cut off the wide option. Because the number 8 is coming across, he can then cover the middle option. And because all these other players were on the opposite wing, the next closest player is our right fullback, or number 2, who can also step up and help. So we should see the backline shift across and the number 2 step up. So now let's go over our rules again. Rule number 1, the number 9 is cutting off any circulation pass to switch the ball back across. The number 8 is covering any vertical option here. He can get across to cover that. The number 7 is cutting off any pass to the wing. And the number 2 is filling the initial role here on the ball side of covering the passing window in between pressing players. So between the 7 and the 8, this number 2 is covering this gap. So now we still have one more passing window to cover in between our pressing players, between the 9 and the 8. As the 10 is our next closest player, he will shift over. And now you can see our 2-1-2 shape once again. And again, the weak side player becomes sort of a free man over here, trying to cover any big switch of play back across or looking to steal any ball. Finally, in this example, our number 6 has the option to either drop into the defensive line like so and help. He would probably do this if this number 5 was threatening to play a big ball over the top immediately. The number 6 on our team's other option is to step in and tag out the number 10 if he thinks there's no immediate threat over the back line. The number 10 then steps in and tags out the number 8, who tags out the number 2, who can now recover back to his initial position. The reason for this rotation is now we're back in sort of our 4-2-3-1 shape, and we still hold the 2-1-2 pressing shape as well. So now let's give another example in a different formation. This 2-1-2 pressing is not exclusive to any one formation. It can be done in any defensive formation against any attacking formation. So this example, we're going to work in a 3-5-2 as the orange team against a 3-5-2 in blue. So the first pass, we'll say the keeper rolls out to the center back in the middle. Because the center back is straight in the middle of the field, we need to cut off the circulation pass to either side. So to do this, our number 9 and our number 11 will both cut off the pass. Notice our number 9 goes more towards the ball, and the number 11 cuts off the pass to the other side. We still want to apply pressure, so we don't want our 9 to fade off towards the blue number 5. We want some pressure on the ball. So rule number 1, our circulation passes are cut off. Rule number 2 is to cover the vertical option. We now have a few choices. We can either step one of the left or right center midfielders in to cover the center and then shift the other 2 accordingly. Or, as we will in this example, we'll have the holding midfielder step in and cover the middle. Then our 10 and our 7 will step in to cover the passing windows in between our pressing players. So the passing window between the 11 and the 8 is covered by our 10, and the passing window between the 9 and the 8 is covered by our 7. If you notice the back line, we have a 3v2, so we still have one additional player, so we're okay here. So now, there's really no weak side to the field because the ball is straight in the middle of the field. So what this means is both our wing backs, our number 2 and our number 3, can step up and become a bit more aggressive. Of course, this takes some intelligence and reading of the play. Our number 2 cannot step too high and allow blue to get in behind him, but if he reads a pass coming out to the 3, this allows him to be in a much better position to prevent it. Now let's say that blue 6 plays a pass out to his left center back. The first step is to cover the circulation pass, so our number 9 will shift to cut off any pass back towards the middle. The number 7 then comes to cut off the vertical option, and the number 2 is out here to cut off any pass to the wing. Now we've established our 3 pressing players, our number 2, our 7, and our 9. So now the windows in between them need to be covered. So how we will do this is our number 4 will first come out to the ball side to cover the passing window in between our 2 and our 7. The reason we can afford to do this is because we still have our 2 center backs plus our wing back on the weak side to shift across. And then the other passing window between our 7 and our 9 will be covered by our 8, like so. And again, you can see the 2-1-2 shape. We have our 2 pressing players and our 9 and our 2. We have our 7 in the middle, and then our 2 covering players Again, we can afford for our center back to step out because at the same time, our other 3 defenders will be filling in behind him. And now our 2 weak side players, our 10 and our 11, become the free men, able to help with any big switch of play or intercept any pass across the field. So they will shift across and help prevent any ball to the weak side. Let's say the blue 5 is able to make a big switch out to the right wing back. Let's remember rules 1 and 2. Rule number 1, we want to cut off the circulation pass, which here to circulate the ball across the field would be a pass back into the number 4. And then in rule number 2, we want to cut off the vertical option, which would be our number 3 here, who's pretty much the closest option to do that. So we see that in action. Our 11 comes across, and our 3 cuts off anything vertical down the wing. Now we want to start to cover the passing window in between our pressing players. So this window would be a gap between the 3 and the 11. So our number 10 is the closest player, so he will come across and fill in between there. And now our back line, which is our 2, our 4, our 6, and our 5, are all going to have to shift across. So to cover the passing window in between our 3 and our 10, our left center back this time will have to come shift across, and then the 3 will fill in behind to form the defensive line, like so. Now we have one passing window in between our 11 and our 10 still wide open, so we will shift our 8 across to do that. And now our 7 and our 9 become the free players on the opposite side to cut off any big switch or pass. And again, you can see our 2-1-2 here. It's our 3 and our 11 form the front line, with our 10 in the middle and the 5 and the 8 the covering players. Just remember that the main goal of this pressing system is not to immediately win back the ball. We're encouraging players to either play into the middle where our guys are at, or to play a bad pass through a passing window that doesn't really exist. Thank you for watching the video. Please leave any feedback in the comments.